Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Walrus Talks Creativity at Western. My name is Michael Milday, and I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Humanities. Together with the Arts and Humanities Students' Council, we are the sponsors for tonight's event. We are delighted to have an absolutely incredible lineup of speakers for you. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to Western and to extend a special welcome to those of you who have traveled to London to visit us. I would also like to acknowledge that the City of London rests on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Atawandaron, and Wendat peoples. The topic that we proposed for this evening is creativity. I would like to suggest that our general experience of creativity is complicated. We all seem to agree that creativity and related notions of innovation and imagination are vitally important. Without them, we would have no art, no design, no literature, and no song. We rely on innovation for advances in technology, science, medicine, business, and education. And we also recognize that our most intractable social problems, political problems, and environmental problems will be resolved only when some novel, as yet unimagined, solutions can be brought to bear. So we set a very high value on what creativity can do for us. Given this importance, you might suppose that our society would dedicate substantial effort and energy to cultivating creativity. In particular, you might expect that the full resources of education, especially university education, would be mobilized for that purpose. But it turns out that education these days is tasked with other duties. Universities are increasingly being asked to produce job-ready graduates, and all too often that just means individuals with skills that happen to be in demand at a particular point in time of the job market. Too often, our most creative students are subtly threatened with the question, sure, that is all very interesting, but how are you going to get a job with that? Creativity can and should be risky. We value what is new and innovative, but we also recognize that many new ventures and many new ideas will inevitably fail. In the absence of a culture of appropriate encouragement and support, we will be tempted to turn our backs on creative possibilities and settle for what is safe or familiar. A climate of fear can thus come to rob us of our human potential. In the Faculty of Arts and Humanities, we are dedicated to the proposition that the first task of the university must be to educate the imagination. We have the great good fortune to have daily access to a vast and fertile store of human ingenuity. Language, literature, art, and the world of ideas all attest to the power of human creativity. By engaging with these elements, studying them, analyzing them, and learning to work with them, we provide the scaffolding for our own attempts at creative endeavor. We learn to be open to the possibility of creative understanding across the full range of human experience. And we know that our graduates take that education out into the world. They contribute across expected and unexpected contexts, ranging from the cultural to the political, the institutional to the entrepreneurial. And we have 6 of our alumni on the stage with us tonight. So, through innovative programs such as the School for Advanced Studies in the Arts and Humanities, through our commitment to the Alice Munro Chair in Creativity, honoring our Nobel laureate in literature, and through our participation in the Walrus Talks tonight, the Faculty of Arts and Humanities aims to inspire students to be creative and develop the imaginative capacities they need to solve the present problems of the day. And now, it is my great honor to introduce Shelley Ambrose, a Western alumna from the Arts and Humanities. Shelley is the publisher of the Walrus magazine and the executive director of the Walrus Foundation. Now I invite her to take over the proceedings. Shelley.
Thank you, Dean Milday. It's a thrill for me to be back on campus. Although when I was here more than 30 years ago, the university had a slightly longer name. It's kind of weird for me to think about it differently. A lot of things have changed and a lot of things have remained the same. What has remained the same is how gorgeous this campus is, and Middlesex covered in ivy or in snow is one of the reasons I wanted to go to Western. It sort of satisfied the ideal of what a real university was supposed to look like. And I'm glad that Middlesex remains untouched. And the Mustangs are still the Mustangs, although that fancy new stadium is new to me. And some other changes. I lived in Saugeen, Maitland for my first 2 years here, and I know we're not allowed to call it the zoo anymore, but that is what we called it then. And I moved from the zoo into Beaver Hall, and now years later I'm at the Walrus. So I'm wondering if there was some sort of foreshadowing there, my affinity for the animal kingdom. I'm not really sure, but it clearly started here. When I attended Western, Medway in Sydenham housed men, Delaware and Brescia housed women, and Saugeen, a wild experiment when it began in the 70s, was co-ed. That was like really extreme. The very first computer I ever saw was here at Western. It took up an entire floor of a building. There were no laptops, no desktops, no cell phones, no Blackberries. There was one phone in a closet at the end of our hall in Saugeen. When it rang, someone answered and then yelled down the hall, "Shelley, it's your mom!" And then you had to run down the hall and get the phone. Once a week on Sundays, because the rates went down after 6 p.m., I would go to the payphone in the lobby and wait in line to phone home collect to my parents so they knew I was alive. No texting, no Facebook postings, no helicopter parents, virtually no adult supervision of any kind. Except for the poor Dawn on our floor at Saugeen, who was completely tortured by our loud music because no headphones, no smartphones, no personal soundtracks. When I ran out of money, which was about, I think I remember, about this time of year every year, I would send a postcard to my parents, "Eating craft dinner, no butter, no milk." As I was on the meal plan, this had little or no effect. But it did mean that my visits to the Spoke and the Seeps were greatly reduced. The Seeps, by the way, was founded in 1890, just 12 years after the University of Western Ontario was founded. You have to wonder if the founders thought about this whole new cohort of potential clientele, and I wonder what the founders would think if they knew you could now follow the Seeps on Twitter. I knew you already knew all of those things I mentioned about Western. I know that about you because you're here at the Walrus Talks. So that means you are also fearless, witty, thoughtful, and you're curious about Canada and the world. I also know you're busy, and we appreciate your choosing to spend some time with us. Here's a little bit about us. The Walrus Foundation is a charitable nonprofit with an educational, that's the pointy-headed part, an educational mandate to create forums for conversations vital to Canadians. We publish the Walrus magazine in print, tablet, and phone 10 times a year, and we produce this national series of talks events, as well as podcasts, ebooks, and original content on Walrus TV. The Walrus Foundation is in part supported by individual donors. Yep, we're a charity, and we rely on support to exist. There are some other Walry present tonight, and yes, we know that's not a word. Our new editor-in-chief, Jonathan Kay, has come down with us for the evening, and I expect this event will be showing up on the walrus.ca within the next 24 hours under John's byline. So make sure to visit. And while you're at the walrus.ca, please sign up for our newsletter. A word about tonight. We have brought the Walrus Talks to Victoria, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Saskatoon, St. John, Halifax, Ottawa, Montreal. The topics have ranged from energy to water to performance, vice, philanthropy, human rights, and all things Arctic. Tonight here, creativity. So why creativity? Because higher education in the arts and humanities is under fire in some sectors for being impractical, or not necessary, or not adequate training for the so-called real world. I will tell you what I learned here helped pave the way for what I do now. And let me tell you, there is no way to run something like the Walrus without creativity. Sure, on the content side, but also on the business side, the philanthropic side, corporate sponsorship side, on the survival side. So here at Western, especially with the creation of the Alice Munro Chair in Creativity, our topic seems especially pertinent. Here's how it works. Each of our esteemed speakers has exactly 7 minutes. They know this. Each will come on stage and introduce themselves. There is no MC. I will not be popping up and down like a jack-in-the-box reading their bios. If you want to know more about the speakers, they are in order on your program. Their bios are on the back. I know you can follow along. You will hear the 9 of them in a row, and our hope is that a little over an hour from now, you'll be thinking, I never thought of it that way, and that we'll have a lot to talk about at the post-talks reception and out there in the world. Tonight's event is also being live streamed at thewalrus.ca and will also be available for viewing at Walrus TV. If you're tweeting, and we encourage you to tweet and promise your neighbors will not think you are being rude. The hashtag for this event is Walrus Talks. I'm going to disappear and let them get underway, but just before, I'm going to thank our incredible speakers in advance. They are all volunteers in the cause. We're very grateful to them. So thank you. Musician Socrates, author, London's own Emma Donoghue, Toronto International Film Festival and Western alum Cameron Bailey. Big picture over there at Alumni Hall. Giant thing, Cameron. It's fantastic. Blackberry's Brian Paschke, Lainey Louie, daughter of the Squawking Chicken, Western's own Joel Flaflick, actress, television presenter extraordinaire, and Western alum Jugan Kazim, who has come all the way from Lahore, Pakistan, to be with us tonight. Singer, songwriter, tech developer, Moist frontman, and new author David Usher, and from Regent Park neighborhood in Toronto, and a Walrus Talks alum, the poet Mustafa Ahmed. Thank you all for coming. Let us begin.
As Shelley said, we got 7 minutes, so I'll make it quick but potent. Any math majors in the house? Anybody good at math? Okay, we're gonna do this. I have 7 minutes to knock it down. I feel like I'm 18. But at this point, it's been a long time coming, and I moved to Toronto in '86 when I was 9, which means I am how old now? I was 9 in '86. Any hands? How old am I? Oh, shoot. You're wrong. I have to do 38 years of my life in 7 minutes. So here it goes. And these are based on the roots of creativity and what gave me the opportunity to actually stand here and give you any advice or any motivation or inspiration. I was born in Ottawa, spent 2 years there. I don't know how much that helped, maybe politically, I don't know. Moved to Edmonton for 7 years, lived there for the Oiler dynasty. I'm also an athlete. That's Gretzky, Messier, the best in the game. In Edmonton, the difference is I became a product of my environment. My parents, mainly my mother, put me into music. Amani, you go play the violin. 2nd grade. The difference between Edmonton and where I would have been if I was in Toronto is a 2-year jump. That 2-year jump, when I moved to Toronto in '86, became a world of difference. Because I show up in Toronto with a violin case, 4th grade, in '86, halfway through the year, and nobody else had started playing. I hated the instrument before that, but once I knew I was better than everybody else, then I loved it. And I stuck with it. I'm a classically trained violinist, and I played it all the way through school. Me and Eddie used to break dance at music camp, Scarborough Music Camp, all the time from the Bare Naked Ladies. Everybody knows Eddie with the glasses. Really cool cat. Anyway, moving forward, what happens is, if you are, I didn't ask to be put in these positions. So again, the environment helped me out. So I'm not telling you, hey, you should do this or do that. I got lucky. And that luck propelled. So now in Toronto, I've got my violin. I'm going to R.H. King Academy, 9th grade on the bus in a uniform, an hour away from home. And I'm nervous. And what was crazy is the seniors, for some reason, took me in right away. I think it's one reason is one of the seniors was in my music class, and I think he played trombone or something. We played in the symphony orchestra, and he said, yeah, my name is Amani, but my first name is Carl. He said, yeah, that guy Carl, he's cool. So let him roll. And all of a sudden, my confidence builds. Okay, well, yeah, fast forward. All of a sudden, there are these programs, a program that jumps up in Ontario called Jobs Ontario Youth. The JOY program, sponsored by the NDP government in 1991 or 92. Could have been before some people in this room were even born. I hate saying this. I feel like I'm dating myself because I look so young, fly, and fresh, but I'm almost 40. Anyway, this program was to initiate visible minorities, which has changed now because we're practically half, if not more. We could be the visible majority now, but that's a whole other conversation. But this program was to give people summer jobs, teens, summer jobs. And one of those programs was Fresh Arts. And Fresh Arts was funded by the NDP government of Ontario. We got paid to learn how to sell art. I started off visual art because I'm also a visual artist. It's visual art, theater, music, dance, spoken word, events planning, everything. And we're getting paid $6.85 an hour for 2 months. Awesome. But what happened now is within those first 2 years, I put a record out. I was 16 years old in high school with a record on the radio. And again, I am a product of my environment. It's not, and this is where I want to leave off. If I don't get to say all 38 years in this 7 minutes, this is the main point, is the fact that if you can put yourself in the right environment or situation, you don't need to go beg for an opportunity. Sometimes it'll find you. Most of the time it does. And then you do the work to push forward. So I want to make sure that everybody in here, young to old, no matter what color, you take advantage of these opportunities. So I'm 17, in high school, driving a Mustang, music video on TV, and I got to tell my teachers, I'm gone for 2 months because I got to go on tour. And this is before I graduated. I'll never let that story go. My son, Dakota, and my wife, Alana, they're like, you told that story about 1,000 times. Like Al Bundy. Football stories. I got those too, but we'll save that for another time. But my point is the roots of creativity aren't necessarily to be sought out. Like, okay, where can I get started? Sometimes it's right under your feet. 9 times out of 10 it is. So what I would like you to do is, if you could almost fast forward yourself from where you are now and think about where you're going. Because I could talk about accolades and everything, but the most important thing about this conversation is what I'm saying is the environment that was available, I took advantage of. So everybody in this room, student, alumni, onlooker, cameraman, take advantage of the ground beneath you and move forward. And I haven't been watching the clock, but it feels like I'm getting to 7 minutes. I could go on for days. 38 years in 7 minutes. Take advantage of your position. And remember that Toronto is not a planet. Toronto is a city. The world is to be seen. Move your ass. And good night.
Good evening. I'm Emma Donoghue, and I'm a keen Walrus subscriber. They didn't make me say that, I just thought I should. So, I was going to call my talk 7 Ways Creativity is Like Gardening, because I find that the most accurate metaphor. I don't have intense one-to-one romances with my books where I devote myself to each book and ignore the world. It's more like I go into the garden, potter around and say, that one's looking ugly, but maybe spring will come, and I should plant something there, and ooh, that one's past ready to be harvested. And as with gardening, you can always recycle the rotten bits. And then I thought, no, I know so little about gardening that really it won't take me past 2 sentences. So then I thought, I'll call it 7 Ways Creativity is Like Kid Stuff, because kids are just intrinsically creative. They're like mini gods, you know. My son gets on Minecraft, and he's just not remotely inhibited about the idea of dreaming up a planet from scratch. But then I thought, I talk about my kids enough, so let's not do it tonight. So finally I decided to call my talk, its real title, which I didn't want to put in the program, 7 Ways Creativity is Like Sex. Reason number 1, it takes an ordinary situation and it makes it buzz with excitement. The thing about sex is that you take things that were there 10 minutes ago, you know, legs, fingers, mouths, zips, and you put them together and suddenly you've got a thunderstorm. I would say that a scene in a novel doesn't have to be about something intrinsically exciting, it's just the writer has to make it sound exciting. And I think the writer needs to be feeling excited themselves. I think if you're not feeling thrilled, why on earth would your readers? So I try and put myself in a state of regular, intense excitement. Now, sometimes in the middle of writing a scene, sometimes it does occur to me that what is exciting me may not excite all my readers. I mean, my tastes are a little bit specialist. I write about things like, my last novel, when I mentioned it to a journalist that I was writing about a cross-dressing frog catcher in 19th century San Francisco, he said, good one. But in fact, that was true. But at least when I'm writing, I'm having fun, and you never know, the reader might too. Reason number 2, creativity is like sex. There are no rules about where and when you get creative. So long as, to quote Mrs. Patrick Campbell on 2 male actors, you don't do it in the street and scare the horses. I would say you can't force creativity to happen, but you can certainly set the right conditions for you, whether that be flying at 30,000 feet, or with candles and an open fire, or rock climbing, or in a dark cinema. And as with sex, clearing your schedule and leaving your mind time to wander can certainly help. The muse is an unreliable guest, but you can keep an eye out for her, welcome her in. Keep an open mind always about when and where. For instance, when we were going to have kids, I had this completely unrealistic image of how I would write novels with the baby cooing in a rocking bassinet by my side. Now, that's never, in fact, happened, but I have had plenty of quick and dirty writing sessions while my kids are in tennis lessons here at Western, in the big bubble. I sit there with my laptop for an hour and a half, writing good stuff and ignoring my children. Reason number 3, creativity is like sex. There are no rules about who you do it with. You could do it with one other person or with hundreds, whatever rings your bell. For instance, under certain circumstances, I will collaborate for a while. Sometimes with a theatre company, I will have about 3 weeks of intense collaboration, and I get crushes on all of them. And then afterwards, there's an anticlimax, but there's also a certain relief as I head back to my solitary writing office. And I think, well, at least I know what I like here, and at least I'm always on top. Now, some think of writing as a lonely business. I would say I'm not spending my days alone. I'm with all my little characters in my head, particularly as I often write about the dead, the real dead, and they're often obscure real dead. They're not Henry VIII. So I feel they're rather grateful for my paying them attention. And because they have certain facts about their lives, I find it's as if those long dead people kind of wrestle with me and say, it wasn't like that, it was like this. And even if it's invented characters I'm working on, even they become what Chris calls my imaginary friends. You know, they seem to take on a life of their own, and they say things like, I wouldn't do that on page 5. Reason number 4, that's just like sex, is that there are no rules about what to do or how to do it. You can write a book backwards, forwards. You can, once my dad wanted to write a memoir and he'd only ever written literary criticism. So to get past his inhibition, he wrote it on postcards, random postcards, and then put it together afterwards. You can edit a lot or not at all. You can show it to your writing circle or show it to nobody. Fountain pen, laptop, doesn't matter. My only rule is when the school bus takes the children away, I go to my computer and I see what happens. What happens is sometimes online shopping, but not every day. Again, like sex, reason number 5, breaking rules is inherently sexy. So feel free to break any rule you have set for yourself, even a rule like, I must write 500 words a day. I like, for instance, in the middle of working on a novel and feeling really committed to it, I like to just sneak off and write a short story. Short stories just feel fundamentally illicit because they're never the thing I'm meant to be working on. Sometimes, if I'm feeling a little bored working on one book, I'll come here to the library at Western and I will research something that I won't be writing for maybe 5 years. And that feels completely like an unproductive use of my time, and it's thrilling and it refreshes me. And it means that when in 5 years I finally get to writing that book, I've done a lot of the work already. So I would highly recommend trying a genre you've never tried before. I most recently tried murder mystery. I was terrified I'd get it wrong. I'm now trying writing children's fiction. It's always good to draw on that feeling of stage fright, that feeling of, I'm going to mess it up in public. Now again, like sex, reason number 6, there are dry patches and you must not panic. You keep showing up. You keep holding hands with your muse, even if you're not jumping her bones. You keep her company, treat her like a lady. And luckily, there's a lot to be done in most artistic projects that is not itself wildly creative. A lot of a novel is just moving bits around and trying to make them fit, so you can always do that. And if you stay with it, stay thinking about it, the juices will start to flow again. Finally, reason number 7, like sex, creativity is associated with the young, but the old often do it better. We know ourselves. We know what we like. We're more relaxed. We know little tricks to get ourselves going. There is no age where you have to retire. You may get slower, but some would say that's a good thing. You get less self-conscious. You're aware that you have less time to waste, so maybe you spend less of it on Twitter, more of it writing the book. Sometimes I think I'm 45. That's probably past the midpoint. Which books do I really want to write before I die? Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Cameron Bailey. Are the juices flowing? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about death and birth. Canadian culture died last week. You might have missed it. It died shortly after Zanira Ishak of Mississauga, Ontario, was denied the right to take the oath of Canadian citizenship while wearing a niqab that covered much of her face. The precise moment when it died was when Prime Minister Stephen Harper said in a speech that wearing a niqab to a citizenship ceremony was not how we do things here. Not how we do things here. So that got me thinking. What is how we do things here? Whether he meant to or not, our Prime Minister was drawing a line in the sand, or a line in this cruddy late winter snow, meant to define Canadian culture. So what is a culture? It's not just books and films and what turns up for debate on CBC radio. A culture is how we do things. Canadian culture is how we do things here. So when our Prime Minister says that a certain practice is not part of Canadian culture, that kills a certain definition of Canadian culture. Specifically, it kills the definition that says Canadian culture is whatever Canadians say it is. It's whatever Canadians do. It's everything Canadians do. How we do things is how we do things here. That's what we signed up for when our Charter of Rights and Freedoms was signed. We signed up for what we call fundamental freedoms. Freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of thought, freedom of belief, freedom of peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. It's the freedom to say, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want, so long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. This is Canada, after all. So the good news is that whenever Canadian culture dies, it gets reborn. These days, it gets reborn instantly. I like to call that process sarcastic Twitter. No sooner had the decree come down that wearing a niqab to a citizenship ceremony was not how we do things here, Sarcastic Twitter lit up with the hashtag #DressCodePM. Somebody posted a picture of a female doctor delivering a baby with her face and head covered by surgical gear with the words, "Perhaps I shouldn't gown and mask in the OR, #DressCodePM. Not sure if my V-neck sweater and cords were a good choice today. Please help me out, PM Harper, #DressCodePM. Need clarification. Does PM Harper need to approve my wife's clothing, or can any man do it? #DressCodePM. 3-year-old niece wants to wear her pajamas all day. This strikes me as a rejection of Canadian values. But I'm unsure. Please advise, #DressCodePM. So thankfully, Canadian values continue to include sarcasm. Sarcastic Twitter is how we do things here, which explains Canadian creativity. Canadian creativity is built on the principle of not that. Not that English poem, but a Canadian version of that English poem. Not that French folk song, but a Quebecois response to that French folk song. And especially not that American movie, that American painting, that American pop song. Not that, but this. This parody of American TV shows called SCTV. This rejection of a great American novel called Alice Munro. This inversion of American hip-hop called Socrates. Or Shad. Shad the artist was made right here in London, Ontario, Canada. Couldn't have been made anywhere else. Canadian culture has been criticized and denigrated for being reactive, for responding to culture made in other places. That criticism is itself so Canadian, because what we beat ourselves up for is exactly what we should be celebrating. There is no pure originality in culture. That should be obvious. Everything artists create is created from other material, other art, other experiences, other histories. The cliched misquote goes that good artists copy and great artists steal. We should probably add a line to that. Canadian artists copy, steal, remix, and drop the mic. That's how we do things here. I began to really learn about Canadian culture and Canadian creativity right here at Western, probably about 200 years ago. I learned about the complex web of illusion in James Rainey's poetry, the radical play in Michael Snow's filmmaking. In fact, even more than Wavelength, the Michael Snow film I love is a cinematic Mobius strip called So Is This. I learned about Margaret Atwood and Leah Poole, and the more I learned, the more I realized that Canadian culture, like all great cultures, is a beautiful patchwork of associations. The more you learn, the more you see the connections. And because Canada's not really old enough or big enough or powerful enough to have ever developed one dominant culture, artists here get to play in those in-between spaces. A Cree painter like Kent Monkman steals from the colonizing paintings and photographs that try to literally capture Indigenous people, and he reinvents them. He satirizes the philosophical certainty in the work of a photographer like Edward Curtis, and then blows it wide open. He destabilizes it. That's the same thing that David Cronenberg does with the horror film genre, destabilizes it. What Stan Douglas does with New York art photography, what Arcade Fire and Broken Social Scene did with indie rock, what Guy Maddin does with European silent cinema. They open up holes, fissures, breathing room. They break open anything that looks like a solid, total whole. That is how we do things here. So Canadian culture was born again this week when Canadian women poked all kinds of holes in the idea of anyone in power telling us how we do things here. Parody and sarcasm were the familiar, reliable, very Canadian weapons. Don't ask us to take any orders as gospel. Don't ask us all to follow the same path. We're too creative for that. Luckily, we have that charter that's meant to protect our brilliant, subversive creativity. Freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of thought, freedom of belief, freedom of peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. So niqab if you want to, or don't. That's how we do. Thank you.
My name is Brian Paschke. I'm an industrial designer for BlackBerry. I want to begin with a fitting quote. At first glance, it appears to be something from a Jules Verne book. But if you look closer, it was written by the prolific artist and pioneer of the data movement, Max Ernst. Design, like exploration, Design is a process, often referred to as exploration, which is very appropriate. For each project, the process is the same, but the journey is always different, with its own challenges, joys, and surprises. Sometimes it feels like you'll never get to the end, but you do. And when you do, like the explorer, what you get to keep is the memory of the journey and the knowledge gained. So inspiration, it's something that I'm often asked about as a product designer. For me, it's a catalyst. It's a moment that can truly be felt, where a project accelerates in a certain direction and connections are made. Personally, this can be triggered from very different sources, such as travel, film, nature, and even a simple conversation. Sometimes it's personal, but often it's a product of collaboration. So here are some quick examples. A set of cigar tools that come together to form one, inspired by the docking of spacecraft. A wooden chair, inspired by the uniforms of samurai. A mobile phone that is the ultimate black slab, inspired by the mysterious monolith from the film 2001. And jewelry, inspired by wormholes and mathematical concepts like the torus. A QWERTY smartphone, inspired by the protection of an astronaut's helmet. A solar-powered light that turns on when you flip it over, inspired by the warmth and power of daylight and the soft glow of the moon. And the People's Choice Award for TIFF. When you look inside, you can see a slide from the winning film. This was inspired by the director's viewfinder. And the BlackBerry Passport. Now, this is a product that was released in 2014, not long ago, that definitely creates an emotional response with anyone who encounters it. But before I talk about the inspiration for that product, I want to jump back a step. An exploration is often triggered by a challenge, a problem, or a question. For the Passport, the challenge was to envision a modern BlackBerry that carves its own path, one that stays true to brand strengths and heritage, yet new and unexpected, and a product with functionality at its core. So personally, for me, the beginning of any project looks something like this. It's complex, exciting, limitless, vast, and very scary. At first, you don't know where to start, but ideas begin to emerge like beacons at unexpected times and in unexpected places. Charles Eames once said, "Eventually, everything connects." In knowing this, one can feel confident that making quality connections between unlikely ideas may lead to a solution. It's the composition of these connections that creates a unique and unexpected point of view. For the Passport, the beacons fall into the categories of format, input, and construction, and I'll talk a little bit about those. So format, the first thing that you notice about this product is how unusual it is in terms of its proportions and its size. Travel is often a part of the designer's job. So my strongest memory of BlackBerry, even before I worked at BlackBerry, was being on an airplane. And when the airplane landed, people stood up and pulled these very large, odd products out of their suit jackets and began composing emails and reviewing documents. And then these little red lights began blinking inside of the plane, almost like a Tokyo skyline at night. For me, this was essential BlackBerry. Doctors, journalists, government officials, and business owners needed to quickly and accurately compose and review documents on the go. So we began looking at sizes and shapes to fit this user's modern needs and expectations. We experimented with many international standards, such as paper, books, and so on, and it seemed the Passport was the most curious of them all. The format fits existing pockets and bags around the world and holds a sense of familiarity. It is, in a way, the international symbol of mobility. The composition of keyboard and large display within this format yielded a refreshing and unique result. It may seem radical as a size and shape, but it's highly functional and has its own beauty because of that. Input. BlackBerry is also obsessed with physical input innovations and has a long history with it. Scroll wheels, keyboards, optical joysticks, and now the touch-sensitive technology under the keyboard shown on the right. The keyboard was radically re-engineered to 3 rows of physical keys, making items like symbols and numbers contextual and digital. What this means is basically they appear on the screen only when and where they're needed. This makes for a much larger screen-to-keyboard ratio. Typography, scale, and color help to merge the digital and physical keyboards so they act as one. So we used a typeface called Slate, designed by a Canadian designer, Rod McDonald, on both. Construction. We also held workshops in a building overlooking the TD Centre, designed by architect Mies van der Rohe in downtown Toronto. For me, looking at an early image like this, it really represented a new future, a new way of thinking, a new model of construction. It looks like it's landed from another planet. And when you zoom into that building, you see this steel I-beam construction used on the interior and the exterior. We were inspired by Mies's method of exposing a building structure, specifically I-beams, to create visual lightness. The stainless steel frame structure on the passport is exposed in a similar way and provides extra torsional stability as well as a unique shape. It's also an intelligent structure, and what I mean by that is that it's also part of the radio antenna. The display glass is shaped and polished with industrial-grade diamonds to slightly soften the edges of the shape for comfort. The final result is a collage of these 3 ideas: format, input, and construction, creating something highly unique and with purpose. Building it for mass production takes many creative engineers, designers, scientists, inventors, programmers, and managers, each with their own challenges and journey. We continue to get emails and tweets from people who absolutely love the product, by the users it was designed for, who have made it their own. And again, what the designer retains at the end of the day is a memory of the journey only, and the knowledge gained that it can be applied again to make the next product even better. Thank you.
You've just enjoyed about half an hour of really classy and cerebral Walrus talk, so I just want to warn you that I'm about to take it into the gutter. So if you would like to leave for my 7 minutes, I totally understand, and I'd like to apologize in advance. My name is Lainey Louie. I really struggled with how I was going to contribute to a conversation tonight about creativity because these people here are obvious creators. I'm a gossip blogger, a talk show host, and an entertainment reporter. So I talk shit about celebrities all day, every day, and I get paid for it. I think I talk shit about celebrities in a really creative way, but no one thinks of me as someone who actually creates anything. So part of my insecurity about being included among these creators here is that I'm firmly planted on the low culture side of the discussion, while they very clearly, as you've heard so far, represent high culture. They're the pride of the panel. You'd rescue them first and you'd leave me on the back of the boat and let me drown. And I feel like that's the place that low culture represents. Low culture, by its very name, is down here, the scab of society, and high culture is the art. You've no problem citing lines from Shakespeare, that's high culture, but you kind of smirk sheepishly when you reveal that you know all the names of Taylor Swift's ex-boyfriends. That's low culture. But I think we can all agree that all art is storytelling. And low culture is storytelling too. Gossip is storytelling. And I'll take it one step further. Low culture can exist without high culture, but can high culture exist without low culture? Or does low culture drive high culture? If high culture is the summit of creativity, Is low culture the birthplace of creativity? If there was, you can still leave. I was on my way here, back here, I went to school here, and I had this daydream, and I knew I was going to meet all these deans and academics, and I was like, man, maybe I can tell them my daydream, that one day Western University would have a school of gossip. And at the school of gossip, this would be the academic endeavor, to validate gossip not just as the spark of high culture, but as its actual origin. But what is the origin of gossip itself? Last month, the BBC investigated how gossip came to be, reporting that right now there are researchers all around universities in the UK, and they're working on this hypothesis that gossip evolved out of grooming. So grooming was how our ancestors forged social bonds, but grooming can't be scaled. Like, you can only groom 1 or 2 people at a time, so as our brains got bigger, we developed verbal communication, and as those skills became more sophisticated, gossip was born. So I just want to make sure you didn't miss that point. For those of you who think that gossip is for idiots, it came into existence as we got more intelligent. According to philosopher Julian Baggini, gossip is, quote, a moral appraisal of other people about the judgment of what people are doing and whether it's right or wrong, good or bad. So back then, when our brains first started growing, they morally appraised each other and gossiped about each other as skills for survival. For example, who do you think is a better stick gatherer, Joe or John? Well, Joe's kind of slow, and it takes him a long time to figure things out, so if we put Joe in charge, we'll probably freeze to death, so let's send John instead. The modern equivalent of that, though, is that the Daily Mail in London is reporting that Queen Elizabeth has grounded her son, Prince Andrew, and is sending her grandson, Prince Harry, to represent her overseas because Andrew allegedly slept with a hooker. So gossip kept Neanderthals warm, high culture, and gossip is saving the royal family, low culture. Still, gossip continues to have a bad reputation, even though prestigious institutions are defending it. In 2014, Stanford University published a study that found that gossip can improve society by identifying bullies, ostracizing their behavior, and then inviting the offenders back by showing them how to reform, which in turn promotes cooperation. So basically, all the bitching and gossiping we've engaged in about what a little punk Justin Bieber has been over the last 2 years has actually served to illuminate the dark side of child entitlement and child stardom. We've been doing him a favor. And look, he's on a tour of contrition now. He's on Ellen DeGeneres' show every week to apologize for what an asshole he's been, and instead of pissing in restaurants and egging people's houses, he's now going bowling with senior citizens and taking his shirt off all the time. Gossip did that. You're welcome. But to bring it back to creativity, in addition to its benefit to society, how is gossip contributing to the arts? How is low culture informing high culture? Thematically, low culture has been inspiring high culture literally for thousands of years. Tabloids in Egyptian times took the form of hieroglyphics. Servants used to etch symbols into the walls to tell each other who was fucking who in the royal court. Apparently, there was a queen depicted in a series of really flexible body positions with one of her ministers, and a king who used to make late-night visits to one of his advisors in the middle of the night. Back then, they called it gossip. Now, we've rebranded that history and archaeology. The low culture becomes high culture. It's cultural alchemy. And there's evidence of this in literature, too, turning the base into precious. After all, what are the recurring themes of gossip? Love, hate, discovery, jealousy, obsession, betrayal, mean girling. Taylor Swift and Katy Perry first started hating each other over John Mayer, and then later over a few backup dancers. Like Hippolyta and Titania love triangling each other over Oberon and Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, which I read here when I didn't skip English Lit. So, love, hate, discovery, jealousy, obsession, betrayal, mean girling, that's pretty much the subtitle to Macbeth. Shakespeare wrote soap operas. He wrote for an audience that understood the soap opera. He wrote for an audience that, for the most part, couldn't read, but they didn't have to read to appreciate the fundamental blocks of storytelling. They didn't need to be elite to recognize the gossip in his art, to understand that gossip inspired his art, to know that without gossip, there would be no art. Because without Beyonce, you'd never be able to say that, I woke up like this. You wouldn't appreciate the awesome power of a wind machine, which Walrus wouldn't supply to me tonight. You wouldn't feel so guilty about spending so much time wondering what happened in that elevator. And for those of you who are too good to know about that, Beyonce and her husband, Jay-Z, were in an elevator with her sister Solange, and then hidden video camera came out of Solange beating the shit out of Jay-Z, and the gossip world exploded. I'm telling you, you don't have to feel guilty about caring about that. Not when Harvard Business School has published a legit case study on the business of being Beyonce. If Harvard cares about what happened in that elevator, it's okay for you to care about what happened in that elevator, which, and I know this isn't what you want to hear, but I hear it had more to do with Solange's needs than whatever was going on with the Carters. Rumor has it, Solange is allegedly hard up for cash, and Beyonce and Jay-Z shop for real estate in the neighborhood of $70 million. So it's textbook sibling rivalry, like Kate and Bianca in The Taming of the Shrew, Cal and Aaron Trask in East of Eden, Michael and Fredo Corleone in The Godfather. All of which we could discuss more elaborately if this institution of higher learning could just form a school of gossip. If you build it, deans, provosts, all the other really smart people who are here, I promise you I will be the first to enroll. Thank you.
I'm Joel Faflak. I'm the academic. And that's pretty much as funny as my talk will get the whole night. The other day, I was lip-syncing to Barbra Streisand, the way you do when you're a 55-year-old white gay male in London, Ontario, and thought about what it means to feel out of sync. When a border guard asks me what I do, I say teacher, because it's awkward and not a little pompous to say professor of English literature or director of the School of Advanced Studies in the Arts and Humanities, or rhyme off my research interests, which include Romantic literature, 18th and 19th century philosophy, psychiatry, psychoanalysis, pop culture, film musicals, and I already hear your eyes glazing over just as I do that list. As a product of the working class, I have an ambivalent relation to my accomplishments. I walked out on a master's degree in English literature to start a business. All that complexity and interpretation made me feel useless. My mother cried, "I had such hopes for you." Although when I gave up business to return to school, she said, "You're giving up all that money?" I know now it's okay maybe to have both, but my mother also warned me, "You think too much." What terror was she protecting me from when she said that? Why this advisory alert against contemplation without the urgent demand to make sense? Put another way, why is it dangerous or pointless to educate hearts and minds, as well as hearts and souls, as well as minds and bodies? Why this distrust of deep, often disruptive thought against educating imaginations and curiosity, empathy, curation, engagement, translation, creativity, things that come with picking up books, pens, brushes, violins, cameras, instead of guns? To tell our stories and the stories of others, to remain capable, and this is where it gets geeky, really geeky, to remain capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, and doubts without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. That's the Romantic poet John Keats in 1817. In 1859, Matthew Arnold said poets like Keats were premature. Like Hamlet, they thought too much and didn't do enough. Creativity should lead to critical action, but even Arnold might be wearied by our world of metrics and tireless innovation for innovation's sake. Here's Shelley in his 1821 defense of poetry. We have more moral, political, and historical wisdom than we know how to reduce into practice, more scientific and economical knowledge than can be accommodated to the just distribution of the produce which it multiplies. The poetry in these systems of thought is concealed by the accumulation of facts and calculating processes. We want the creative faculty to imagine that which we know. We want the generous impulse to act that which we imagine. We want the poetry of life. Here's Thomas de Quincey in 1845. Among the powers in man which suffer by this too intense life of the social instinct, none suffers more than the power of dreaming. Now, he was an opium addict, so take it for what it's worth. Remember that Plato banished the poets from society for dreaming. Here's W.H. Auden in 1939, and I apologize, these are all dead white guys, I know. Poetry makes nothing happen. It survives in the valley of its saying, where executives would never want to tamper. It flows south from ranches of isolation and the busy griefs, raw towns that we believe and die in. It survives. A way of happening, a mouth. It's not that poetry is useless, it's that it speaks otherwise. It survives creatively. So here's my question. Are we pushing ourselves too hard? Creative failure is a catchphrase that means we need to turn on the pivot of failure as quickly as possible. But I'm mindful of Samuel Beckett. Try again, fail better. Maybe not such a good idea for a recruitment poster. But let's not forget that the failures of political imagination that routinely and rather uncreatively waste public money on a daily basis. Would it be so bad to promote poetry or mere contemplation as essential forms of education, as a necessary squandering of creativity? In our students' faces, I see a fearless capacity to tackle the future. We design entire educational and professional systems to help them do so. We ask them to work as hard as possible to advance as quickly as possible across the horizons of their futures, and we ask them to map out that horizon on our behalf. But as William Blake writes, the future can unfold, a perilous path. So to them we can also say, don't be afraid to waste your time, to lose your way, to risk failing. It's the only way to figure out your story. If we all stopped being so goddamn useful for just a moment, what might happen to climate change, to the unrestrained exploiting of limited natural resources, growing socioeconomic disparity, to religious, political, sexual, and cultural intolerance against things we don't, can't, or won't try to understand? And what about the neglect of the everyday affective lives of our spirits and those of others? The stories of how we feel. Thought and creativity waste a lot of time and energy. I'm a testament to that. But to imagine that which we know so that the human spirit does not get buried in facts or blinded by progress, how could that possibly be a bad thing? To momentarily disengage from the world while remaining alert to those who might exploit this disconnect. Would a little more productive creative waste actually kill us? Here's what I know. Here's a poem whose aim is true without taking a life. This is for the SASA students. This is for all students. This is for the students that we all are. This is the poet, Polish poet, Czesław Miłosz. Faith is in you whenever you look at a dewdrop or a floating leaf and know that they are because they have to be. Even if you close your eyes and dream up things, the world will remain as it has always been, and the leaf will be carried by the waters of the river. You have faith also when you hurt your foot against a sharp rock and you know that rocks are here to hurt our feet. See the long shadow that is cast by the tree. We in the flowers throw shadows on the earth. What has no shadow has no strength to live. Look for the shadow you cast and get lost, at least for a while. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Jugan Kazim, and I've come all the way from Pakistan. Thank you to Walrus for inviting me to talk about creativity and constraint. Most of us grew up with the idea that creativity and constraints are opposites, like fire and water. That what a true artist needs is actually a blank page, the freedom to do whatever he or she needs. Well, I've learnt to disagree. Art is about choices, what to say, what not to say, and how not to say it. But more choices don't always make us happier or freer. Some years ago, there was even a book called The Paradox of Choice, about how people buy more stuff when given less choice. We see this paradox in the arts the whole time. Take poetry. Yes, you can write free poetry in which nothing rhymes. But there have been many great poets who chose to work within a particular form. Shakespeare wrote sonnets, Ghalib wrote ghazals. I am an actor, and I am a woman. I live in a country where being either of those two can be a pretty big problem sometimes. Every day, I go on air live in front of an audience of millions. I host a breakfast show from 9 to 11. Like all television hosts, I have to work within certain constraints. But because I work for a state-owned channel, I work with even more constraints than others. The first year of hosting my breakfast show, Morning with Jugan, I would often sit on the floor of my bathroom, crying and shaking with frustration because I couldn't talk about any of the things that really mattered to me. Or at least I felt needed to be brought into focus in a place like Pakistan. Violence against women and children, breast cancer awareness, because you can't talk about, well, you can't use the word breast on air, technically. Child molestation, rape, minority rights, the list goes on and on. I kept feeling really sorry for myself, and as a result, I would go on air every day, and I would function almost on autopilot and talk about things without any real emotion or sincerity. Then it dawned on me one day, I was using my constraints as an excuse to be lazy and uncreative. So I took things and I turned them on their head. The topics I could actually talk about, I researched to death with my content team and on my own personal time as well. Over time, as the viewers got hooked, I would plug in slowly and gently the things that actually mattered to me and actually, to be very honest, that matter to the rest of the world. You see, now more than ever, people have total control over what they want to see or be exposed to in the media. So it's a breakfast show, music, film, or even a commercial. People have choices. All they have to do is switch a channel, block you out on social media, walk out of the cinema, or just change the track on the iPod. You have to work within the framework of your constraints and create something meaningful, beautiful, and at the same time interesting to your audience. That's the challenge. It's an uphill battle. But once you get the hang of it, the journey becomes fairly smooth. In the case of my morning show, I realized that the one luxury I had working with the state broadcaster was that I could happily ignore all the stunts that other morning show anchors were doing. In the case of Pakistan, that meant week-long shows on Pakistani weddings with dances and singing and, honestly, the kind of craziness I don't even want to get into. Exorcism specials, where you would get rid of the guests' demons on air for a week, the whole week. And the old staple in the subcontinental television realm, the never-ending drama between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, which I think exists in the West as well. But anyway, instead of all that, I started focusing on the current health issues in the country, up close and personal. A woman that I admire immensely, the whole world does, Oprah-type interviews with celebrities, bringing on high achievers and people of all economic backgrounds and celebrating their lives, the real heroes out there, people who are not really regular because they're extraordinary, because they are people. Well, so as a result, the people started relating to the show more and more. I've seen many morning show hosts come and go, but fortunately I've been with the state channel where when I went in, people were like, good God, I don't know what she's going to do. She went abroad to study. She speaks in English. How will she communicate? But anyway, it's been 3 years and I signed on for another 3. And it's a channel in which you speak actually only in Urdu, which is the language that we speak in Pakistan. It's been a challenge because I've actually relearned how to speak my own language because I've spoken in English so much. Anyway, getting back to the subject. In the middle of all of this, however, I didn't give up on the things that I wanted to get across. So when it came to breast cancer, my solution was to talk about cancer without actually using the word breast. I invited women doctors, experts, and talked about how women how women over 40 need to get themselves screened, and at any stage if you feel something's wrong, go and get yourself checked. I know this sounds very, very basic over here, but in Pakistan it's a step. It's a baby step. But sometimes you do need to hold a hand and get people forward. I just find that when you push boundaries and when you try and force change onto people, sometimes people get very, very upset. On a less serious note, social constraints are equally an issue when it comes to acting in locally produced films and dramas. How do you show love or emotion or intimacy when actors are not allowed to touch each other, let alone kiss? Well, there are many different ways. The old-fashioned way is to translate feelings into words. Have the hero romance the heroine with wit and passion. I'm talking about very traditional stuff. Don't mean to offend anyone. This is Pakistan I'm talking about. Another way is to change your acting style. When you do films in the West, you're told to act smaller. I remember when I started working in Canada initially, I was constantly told, make your character smaller, it's too big. Well, in Pakistan, you have to act large. We have to overact and emphasize emotions with words and gestures. Like Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard, we have to learn to break hearts with just one look. I want to repeat the point I made a bit earlier. We are taught too often that constraints are terrible things, and that every time somebody tries to stop us, we must bulldoze our way through and change the system. Bring about a revolution. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that there are other ways. When I first joined the media, I used to challenge every constraint and scream as loud as I could against it. But people don't like screaming. They don't like confrontation. Many of them simply tune out. What I've learned now is that nudges can be just as effective as pushes. That working for change within a system is often more useful than railing against the system. Or as they say back home, focus on eating the fruit, not counting the trees. So don't be afraid of constraints. As the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. If you embrace constraints and if you embrace challenges, you will become a better artist. Only when one is limited can one begin the journey to becoming completely limitless. This is something I heard on a TED Talk recently. I don't want to take credit for it. You will be forced to look within yourself and to use all of your skills. That will be good for you and your art, no matter what your art may be. Thank you.
I am David Usher. Welcome. So I'm going to be talking about stepping outside of the rules. So in creativity, we know that we need to step outside of the rules, but how do we do that when we are constantly surrounded by the rules, right? The rules of law, the rules of work, the rules of relationships, and a million other tiny unwritten rules that we start to follow. And we love the rules, right? Because they give us dependable and predictable outcomes. If I'm driving in my car and I've got a green light, and you are driving in your car and you have a red light, I love knowing that when we get to the intersection, you're going to stop. In the real world, we want and need predictable outcomes. But creativity is not the real world. In the world of creativity, we want amazing outcomes. We want incredible outcomes. We want outcomes we never could have imagined at the beginning of the process. And for that, we need to step outside of the rules. So when you guys came into this room today, you knew what to expect, right? You would be sitting in the seats, and I would be standing up here on the stage. Because that's normal. That's what's expected. In the theater, this invisible wall that separates us is called the fourth wall. And it's a rule and an understanding we all have of how this relationship is going to work. From your seats, you each get a perfect proscenium view of the stage, which means you all get a very similar experience. I get the safety of distance and elevation, so I can do my thing with authority. But this wall that separates us is imaginary. It's a social construct and a rule that exists only in our minds, and we can cross it at any time.
I don't know because I'm lazy. You'll get to hear the song
kids here? There are no kids here. I swear to my I was almost home free. Except for you. What's your name? Kira. Security! Bring your flashlight. So, in the show, every time I make this gesture, I'm about to swear, so you're gonna have to... You ready? It's gonna be a long night for you, Mom. I like your shirt. Where'd you get that? Oh, you did? Last year. That's great. You were there at the bar last year. Did you have a couple of shots? Social services. So every show I play, whether it's for 300 or for 30,000, I always try and cross the fourth wall, because when you do, it opens up all kinds of creative possibilities. So I'm going to try a little experiment, and let's see the difference. And I'm going to bring my friend John in to help us out with this.
Baby, baby, don't delay. World is ending, I can't change the way I feel about you now. New York's cold as ever. Still I go out every night, hide myself among the lights, bathing all the good things city brings. Our bodies glisten and they shine, like the stars we're born to die, like these roses we all fade. I'm counting the calls on the freeway below, lost in the music, all the foolishness of our lives, spinning out of control, lost in the music, and the music. Baby, baby, please don't cry, wipe the guilt out from your eyes, pick yourself up off the bed, there's no one innocent here. In the mirror you'll find faith, plastic flowers never fade. We all turn red. I'm counting the cars on the freeway low, lost in the music, all the foolishness of our lives, spinning out of control, lost in the music, in the music. How are you? All right? What's your name? Teresa. Good to see you, Teresa. So this is probably not what you expect to be happening in Union today, right? Not at all, right? But why is this weird or uncomfortable? Well, it's really because I'm breaking the boundaries and conditions of what we normally think is going to happen next, right? I broke the first boundary when I stepped off the stage when I came down here. I break the second boundary when I cross the line and I enter into your personal space. And when I do that, it changes the experience and it changes the perspective. The experience we have when I'm up there is different than the experience we have when I'm out here. The perspective that you have sitting down here is different than the perspective you have standing up here with me, right? This is a different perspective. Take it in, take it in. It's lovely, see? This is a different experience. And this different experience gives us a different set of problems. But it also opens us up to a whole new set of creative possibilities, and ones that I never could have had just standing up there on the stage. Right? Right. Right. Now you have to figure out how to get back to your seat. Why am I whispering? I'm not sure. Do you need an escort or are you capable? All right. Go. But it's out here, outside of the script, where all the really interesting stuff happens. And this is where you want your creative process to live. What we are trying to do is structure a creative process that encourages unexpected outcomes. We need to build incredible things, but we can only do that by stepping outside of our safety zone. In the creative process, you have to learn to step outside of the rules. Thank you very much.
Whoever made me go last obviously doesn't care about me. Before I start, I do want to say that this is black and blue, okay? So So I don't care what's your opinion. If you see white and gold, you see black and blue, keep it to yourself until the end of my presentation. My whole talk is going to be, I'm going to take you guys into my creative space. I want to take you guys into the darkness. I want to take you guys through to my experiences, through the death, through the trauma, through the pain, but also through the positivity and also through the light. And I thought, why talk about it when I could just show you guys? So I'm going to need your help. I'm going to need your help. Together, I need you guys to hum with me. And whenever I lift my hands, I need you guys to stop. And whenever I start humming, I need you guys to hum again. And this is what I need from you guys. Let's collect all the energy in this room. Continue. Louder, yeah. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, oh, oh. Together, we rest on quiet instruments, and to every emotion, creativity listens. I said we are broken beings. I want my art to pierce through the distance. For whether through shelters or mansions, we shake and cry in different prisons. The emotions we feel connect us. Music eliminates the distance. The beat, the rhythm of our lives, the anger that erupts like revolutions, the pain that interrupts our evolution, the gunshots, sirens, the screams of my friends for friends sleeping in coffins, silence, mothers crying, silence, shots flying, silence, angels forgetting to fly where hope has died, silence, music, emotions, humans shaken to silence. And I rest on this silence and document the emotions that they never wrote. It may teach you the words that they never spoke, because these keys are reached only with our heart's love notes. It's the blood that spills because you choose to bleed. Blood, the liquid I use to paint this love, letting the colors dance in the air like rainbows were smudged. And when they mix, these liquids of emotion, that's what makes us one. And the melodies of our voices will always harmonize. And it will always be the same liquid that fills our eyes. Like rainfall, we are groups of clouds that cry. Music is my answer to the connection we strive for. Creativity is the stories we'll die with, the stories we live for. Oh, 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 oh. I heard the angel of death knows our streets very well. Streets reek of fallen fires, we know this heat very well. I guess it's unsafe to say that these streets are like hell. And when the young boys reach and raise hell, the bullets, the shells will speak for themselves. Unsafe to say mothers here die twice. Cold winters come thrice after heated summers, a written life. And I have my bros trying to change their fate. Trapped between those trying to end it and those that tell them it's too late. Too late to see silver lining past silver bullets. Dreaming of a different life, but an alarm wakes him that tells him he couldn't. 4 or 5 in the morning, 4 or 5 left another mother morning, good morning. 4 or 5 left another mother morning, good morning. They mistake his passion for anger. So he smokes trees his ancestors used to hang on. His story repeats because we reap what we were raised on. Young and empty and still getting preyed on. He found worth in what destroys self-worth. Dies in his sleep and cries in the morning. Every day is rebirth. I said he dies in his sleep and cries in the morning. Every day is rebirth. And when the soul elevates, his fate is reworked. Trying to stay grounded, cracks on the earth. Potential's hidden, so watch his conscience lurk. On battle zones perched, as constellations they align with his mind. Thoughts of crimes on his mind, recent times on his mind. He's lost so many rhymes on his mind. He inhales, but it's shards that slice his throat. Inhales, it burns, but he learns to cope. Inhales, he feels the fire in his chest. He's inhale. The only breaths he has left can be found with inhale. He inhales. He's inhale. He's inhale. He's in hell. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Dear mind of mine, many fences in my way are once created by me. Dear mind of mine, even you can be a barrier depending on my level of self-belief, and I'm still learning how to believe. So how do I release myself from the grips of me? But within the grips of me, within you is my imagination. And it was not created by those who constructed limitations, so I will be free. And I'll let my mind grow larger than my body, grow a thought is missing to what and where I want to be. So from papers, I wrote my faith like billboards, higher and larger, fearless and taller. I want to skate on fresh lakes and recollect on mountain peaks. I'll take a walk on the beach. I need minerals to fuel my curiosity, that I may find on the horizon and not below my feet. I want to run on the horizon's tightrope, and let the fear of the rope possibly not existing give me the strength to soar. And even if I fall, tired and sore, I'll take hold of a sunbeam and lift myself back up, because these goals, these dreams are worth fighting for. I'd rather that than stand by abandoned sandcastles and wishes by the seashore. And like many, I am a stranger to this world, constantly traveling through a creativity vortex, twisting my realities with my visual cortex, and in my core, text that writes be. So if the present image is unbearable, I'll roll my pupils back into my insides and remind myself to believe. And as they roll back, I'll continue twisting my realities until my actions rain across regions. And yes, I'm still a young rose from the inner cities, sprouting from the cracks of Regent, dodging the many odds, wresting the many demons. But I learned to dream louder than the gunfire in the evenings, as we learned to dream louder than the gunfire in the evenings. To dream intrepidly, as letting these rocks fall in the sea. I'm contemplating my legacy. I want the ripples to spread farther than water. I'm ready to take hold of my legacy. And know that these rocks only fall because I'm scratching the edge of a cliff, getting ready to dive in this sea of risk, where people fight for hours, days, years. For hours, days, years. For hours, days, years they fight. They fight for moments that may never come, doing keep-ups with the moon or racing the sun, because there can only be one. There can only be one of you, so be the greatest one you can be, because the memory of you stands as proof. So how much of you will you give to prove, to pump the blood of your truth? For memories have a life of their own, they live longer than we do. And yes, those in the sea of risk, their constant efforts made for the absence of fear. Still every part of their body fills with sweat. Sweat that has seen more emotion than tears. Because for hours, days, years. For hours, days, years. For hours, days, years, we have fought for this moment. We could say we are here. Loud, emphatic, we are here. Thank you.
Move your ass, Socrates. That's what I'm taking home. Which is more, move your ass, and then really quite surprising, Emma always on top, Donahue. I'll just leave that there. Cameron, doesn't the Prime Minister understand toques? I mean, that is how we do things here. It's sort of that we've always cared what's in your head and not on your head. So maybe we should be doing some toque selfies to that hashtag dress code PM. I think that would be a great one. Brian, I really am happy that people know creativity is for engineers too, because I've met a lot of engineers and I'm often frightened by them. So I'm glad to know that creativity also belongs to them. Elaine, I promise I will not save everyone first and leave you behind. And if you believe me, I'll get you a wind machine next time. Okay? I really will. We'll do that. Joel, Barbara Streisand is not a dead white male. So you're okay. Don't worry. Jugan, can you take Lainey Lou home and put her on your show? She will say breast. And Pakistan will be fine. And you won't be in so much trouble. David, you kind of scared me when you jumped off, and look what you taught young Mustafa there. So you should be careful out there. The kids are looking up to you. Okay? Thank all of you very much. Before I tell you what is going to happen next, please allow me to introduce our other co-host for the night, Western Art and Humanities Student Council President, Liz Nash.
Thank you so much, Shelley, and I would like to start off with some other thank yous. First, thank you to the faculty, to the speakers, to the audience. Thank you to my parents who I guilted into coming tonight. I appreciate it. I hope you buy me groceries later. That would be nice too. So the Arts and Humanities Students Council, we are a group of 50 passionate and engaged students who care about creativity. When I arrived on campus as a first-year student in Saugeen Maitland Hall, I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I was more than a mess. I was a hot mess. I didn't know where I was going, where I was, but fortunately, I had a friend encourage me to apply to be on the Arts and Humanities Students Council, and it was a life-changing decision. I found that being able to connect with other people about topics that I cared about, it was an absolutely electric conversation, and that's why I'm able to stand here today talking to you about all of these great topics. One of my favorite things about the Arts and Humanities Students Council is you actually don't have to be registered in the faculty to take part in it. You just need to be taking 0.5 courses. What this means is that you can have students from all over Western's faculties joining us. So creativity isn't limited to just arts and humanities. You can have people in engineering, science, music. Creativity is found everywhere, and that's what I appreciate most about Western. If you are interested in learning more about joining us, you can check out our booth in the back, which is where our reception will be. We have some great food. That's why I'm here. I've got to grab as much free food as I can. So again, thank you to so much to everyone who has made this event possible, especially my executive. And thank you for coming out on a Thursday night. I love you all. Thank you so much. Have a great night in the shuttle.
Thank you also to Dean Milday and Jessica Steigerl and everyone at Western, especially the Western alumni who so supported us this evening. Thank you to the School for Advanced Studies in the Arts and Humanities. Go Purple, as we say. The speakers will join us at the reception after. You can also purchase their books. The Western U Bookstore pop-up store is out there, and in fact David Usher just launched his first book last night. Congratulations, and I hope that's available out there. There's also a Walrus magazine table, very special offer only for you. 1-year subscription and a tote bag, $20. It does not get, that doesn't even pay for the paper. I'm just suggesting. So go for that. Thank you to the Mustang Lounge for having us, and to the Walrus Director of Events, David Leonard, and our amazing event coordinator, Blair Elliott. I think her parents are here. Blair, are your parents here? There they are. We love Blair. Thank you for coming. I hope we've given you you some food for thought, and also, now that you're a part of the Walrus community, that we'll see you again. Sign up for the newsletter. You'd hate to miss anything Walrusy. And remember, Editor-in-Chief John Kay is here. The Master of Arts in Journalism class that I spoke to today, where are you? John Kay, they want an editor petting